Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Galactic Empire PANICS, mysterious human warship appears out of nowhere. The sensor array on Outpost Vega 7 had been silent for decades. At the edge of galactic hegemony space, Lieutenant Doran Quell had spent 3 miserable years staring at empty screens and filing reports that no one would read. The outpost orbited a frozen moon in a forgotten system, a punishment detail for officers who had displeased the hegemon. Doran sipped his bitter stimulant brew, his 4 eyes half closed in boredom when the alert shattered the silence. A proximity alarm, loud and insistent. "Silence that racket," he snapped at Technician Prell, a young Navari whose scaled skin flushed purple with anxiety. "Probably another sensor ghost from the solar winds." "It's not a ghost, sir," Prell whispered, mandibles clicking nervously. "Mass signature energy readings. It's a ship large and it's just sitting there." Doran's upper eyes widened as he approached the console. The readings were impossible. The vessel had appeared from nowhere, no warp signature, no jump distortion. One moment empty space, the next a massive warship hovering just outside hegemony territory. "Run identification protocols," he ordered, suddenly alert. Prell's claws danced across the interface. No response to standard queries, no transponder signal. Wait, the technician froze. "Sir, hull configuration analysis suggests Terran design patterns." Doran's breath caught. "Impossible. The Terrans were eradicated in the purification. Confirm analysis." "Confirmed, sir. 98.7% match to historical Terran warship architecture. And there's something else. It's broadcasting." A message flashed across their screens, simple text in ancient Terran language. "We survived, we remember." Doran's blood ran cold. Everyone in the hegemony knew the history. The volatile, unpredictable humans had threatened galactic stability. The Hegemon Council had ordered their extinction for the greater good. Their homeworld scorched, colonies purged, survivors hunted to extinction. That was 3 centuries ago. There couldn't be survivors. Yet the evidence floated before them, silent and ominous. "Alert Central Command," Doran ordered, his voice barely steady. "Priority Alpha." Within hours, the Hegemon War Council gathered in the crystal chambers of the capital world, Zenithar. Grand Admiral Velis Thorn, his tentacles writhing with agitation, addressed the assembly. "This appearance is concerning but manageable," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "One ship, regardless of origin, poses no threat to the hegemony." Strategist Krell Morden, a tall Savidian with metallic skin that reflected the chamber's lights in rippling patterns, stepped forward. "With respect, Admiral, if this truly is a human vessel, we must consider the implications, not just tactical but cultural." "Explain," demanded Supreme Hegemon Dravix, his massive form looming from the shadowed throne. "If humans survived our purification efforts, everything we've told our people for centuries is a lie," Krell said carefully. "And if this vessel has revealed itself now, after centuries of hiding, they must have a reason, a plan." "Then we destroy them before they can execute it," the Admiral responded. "Problem solved." "Unless that's precisely what they want," Krell countered. "Remember the historical archives. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, but also brilliant tacticians." The chamber fell silent. The hegemon raised a clawed hand. "Send a diplomatic envoy. If these are truly humans, I want to know how they survived and what they want. Meanwhile, deploy the 7th Fleet to contain the situation." In the archives beneath Zenithar's gleaming spires, Junior Archivist Nayla Jor moved through the stacks of data crystals with practiced ease. Her small frame and unremarkable features made her easy to overlook among the towering shelves, exactly as she preferred. The emergency meeting had created a perfect opportunity. While the senior archivists were summoned to provide historical context on humans, Nayla slipped into the restricted section. She had spent years carefully crafting her position, appearing utterly loyal while secretly harboring doubts about the official histories. Something had always felt wrong about the Terran purification records, inconsistencies, redactions, entire periods missing from the official narrative. Now with trembling hands, she inserted an unauthorized crystal into her reader pad. The file was labeled simply, "Operation Mercy Executive Summary." The contents made her blood run cold. Not a security action against aggressive expansion as taught in schools. Not a necessary evil to prevent galactic war. The files detailed a systematic genocide against a species whose primary crime was refusing to surrender their autonomy to the hegemony. Images flashed across her screen, burning cities, execution camps, children being separated from parents, all documented with the clinical precision of accountants rather than warriors. "What are you doing here, Junior Jors?" Nayla nearly dropped the pad as senior archivist Bendler appeared behind her, his spider-like form casting long shadows across the floor. "Research for the council meeting, sir," she lied smoothly, slipping the crystal into her sleeve with practiced subtlety. "Historical context on human military capabilities." Bendler's compound eyes studied her for an uncomfortable moment. "The council meeting is concluded. Return to your station." "Yes, sir," she replied, heart pounding. As she hurried away, the archival pad hidden beneath her robes, the loudspeakers throughout the complex crackled to life. "Attention all citizens. A security alert has been issued. An unidentified vessel has been detected in Sector 7. Citizens are advised to remain calm. This vessel poses no threat to the hegemony. Reports of its Terran origin are unfounded rumors, and spreading such disinformation is punishable under Imperial Security Decree 17. Too late, Nayla thought. The hegemony was scrambling to contain information they'd kept buried for centuries. Aboard the human vessel, the HSS Remembrance, Captain Julian Torres stood before the viewscreen, hands clasped behind his back. His weathered face reflected decades spent in deep space, eyes that had seen too much sorrow to ever truly shine again. "They've deployed a fleet," reported his first officer, Talia Reeves, her dark skin illuminated by the console lights. 7 warships Scimitar class. Julian nodded as expected, and the transmission. "Broadcasting on all frequencies, Captain," confirmed Communications Officer Fan. "The archives are being received across every colony world, every station, every vessel with reception capability." Julian allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Remembrance carried humanity's most valuable cargo, the truth. Millions of records salvaged from the purification, meticulously preserved by the survivors who had fled beyond the galactic rim. Evidence of the hegemony's crimes, unfiltered and raw. "They're hailing us," Captain Fan announced. "Put them through." The screen flickered, revealing the insectoid features of Admiral Thorne. "Unidentified vessel, this is Grand Admiral Velis Thorne of the Galactic Hegemony. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." Julian straightened, his voice steady and clear. "This is Captain Julian Torres of the human starship Remembrance. We have not entered your territory, Admiral. We are maintaining position outside your claimed boundary." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Impossible, the human species was, there are no humans." "And yet here I stand," Julian replied coldly. "We survived your genocide, Admiral, we rebuilt, and now we've returned not for war but for justice." The transmission from the Remembrance continued to flood across the hegemony, images, documents, testimony from the survivors. 3 centuries of careful lies unraveling in minutes. The first reports of civil unrest came from the outer colonies, then communication blackouts as the hegemony attempted to stem the tide of information. Too late, the truth had been unleashed. Captain Talia reported, "The hegemony fleet is powering weapons." Julian nodded. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the difficult part. "Battle stations," he ordered quietly. "Let's show them that humanity remembers how to fight." The hegemony battlecruiser Invincible led the fleet toward the lone human vessel, its massive energy cannons charging with a violet glow. Admiral Thorne stood on the command bridge, 6 limbs tense as his crew prepared for battle. "Target their propulsion systems," he ordered. "I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. The hegemon will want prisoners for questioning." Weapons Officer Z. Rivix complied, her tendrils adjusting the targeting matrices. "Locked on, Admiral, awaiting your command." Thorne hesitated, studying the strange human vessel. It made no sense, a single ship challenging the might of the hegemony. The humans had always been reckless but not suicidal. What was their true purpose? "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting energy fluctuations. They're activating some kind of..." Before he could finish, the HSS Remembrance vanished in a flash of blue light. "Where did they go?" Thorne demanded, slamming a limb against his command console. "Unknown, sir, no jump signature, no warp trail." The tactical officer's voice trembled. It's like they simply ceased to exist. Thorne knew better. The humans hadn't disappeared, they had merely changed the battlefield. And somewhere in the hegemony, chaos was about to unfold. Nayla Jor moved through the crowded streets of Lower Zenithar, hood pulled low over her face. The stolen data crystal felt heavy in her pocket, evidence that could shatter the foundation of the regime she had served her entire life. The public screens that usually displayed hegemony propaganda now showed emergency announcements, technical difficulties, and scheduled maintenance. But the damage was already done. Whispers spread through the crowd, rumors of a ghost ship, of humans returning from extinction, of forbidden histories. She ducked into a narrow alley and entered a code on an unmarked door. It slid open, revealing a dimly lit room where 5 figures waited. "You're late," growled Krell, a hulking Drakathi whose scaled skin had been scarred by years in the hegemony labor camps. "I had to be careful," Nayla replied, producing the crystal. "The security patrols have tripled since this morning." Professor Landau, one of the few non-humans who had openly questioned the purification narrative, examined the crystal with trembling hands. The elderly Phasian's translucent skin revealed the quickened flow of his circulatory system, excitement or fear. "Is this what I think it is?" he whispered. "Operation Mercy," Nayla confirmed. "The complete files, not just the sanitized summary they feed the council, but the actual field reports, casualty counts, execution orders, everything." Tevik, a former hegemony intelligence officer whose conscience had finally broken him, shook his head in disbelief. "How did you access this? These records are supposed to be purged." "The Archival Council keeps everything," Nayla explained. "They believe knowledge, even terrible knowledge, should be preserved. They just ensure no one can access it without proper clearance." "And you have proper clearance?" asked Mila, a young refugee whose species had been relocated after resisting hegemony annexation. Nayla allowed herself a small smile. "I have good slicing skills and 3 years of observing senior archivists input their credentials." The final figure stepped forward. John Arvas, once a respected diplomat before questioning the hegemon's policies had cost him his position and nearly his life. His cybernetic eye whirred as it scanned the crystal. "This is exactly what we needed," he said softly. "But we must be cautious. If this human ship is truly broadcasting evidence of the purification." "It is," Tevik interrupted. "Internal security channels are in chaos. The hegemon has ordered a complete communications blackout, but it's too late. The humans timed their transmission perfectly. The planetary networks were wide open for the annual address." "But why now?" Krell demanded. "If humans survived, why wait centuries to reveal themselves?" The room fell silent as they considered the question. It was Nayla who finally spoke. "Maybe they needed time to rebuild, or maybe they were gathering evidence, or," she hesitated, "maybe something has changed." Within the gilded halls of the Hegemon Palace, Supreme Hegemon Dravix faced his inner council, rage emanating from his massive form. "How is it possible?" he thundered. "How could humans have survived our most thorough cleansing operation?" High Inquisitor Varric, whose species communicated partly through color changes in their crystalline skin, shifted to a deep purple of concern. "The outer colonies were never fully secured. Some may have escaped beyond the rim." "For 3 centuries," Dravik snarled. "They are remarkably adaptable," Varric replied. "More concerning is how quickly the information is spreading. Despite our blackout efforts, underground networks are sharing the transmission. Riots have broken out on Kelthais and Pavin Prime. 3 mining colonies have declared independence." Strategic Advisor Krell Morden stepped forward, his metallic skin catching the light. "Supreme Hegemon, we must address this crisis with precision. The humans have chosen psychological warfare. They seek to destabilize us from within by exposing our historical necessities." "You mean our lies," said a quiet voice from the corner. All eyes turned to Elder Counselor Thella, one of the few remaining who had lived during the purification era. Her ancient, avian features revealed nothing of her thoughts. "I warned the council 3 centuries ago," she continued, unperturbed by the hegemon's glare. "I said that exterminating the humans was not only morally abhorrent but strategically foolish. They were scattered across too many worlds, too adaptable. Some would survive, rebuild, and remember." "Your objections were noted and dismissed," Dravix replied coldly. "The council decided." "The council was manipulated," Thella interrupted. The humans were eliminated because they questioned our authority, because they refused to surrender their autonomy, not because they threatened galactic stability. The room fell silent, such words bordered on treason. What's done is done, Krell said finally. We must focus on containment. The human vessel has disappeared, but I doubt they've left. They will strike again, likely at a high-value target that will further damage our authority. Find them, Dravix ordered, and prepare Operation Scapegoat. If the humans want to expose our past, we'll give them a present to answer for. On the frigid moon of Corbus III, far from the hegemony fleet, the HSS Remembrance materialized from its quantum shift. Unlike standard warp technology, the quantum displacement drive left no trail, a necessity for a species that had survived by staying hidden. Captain Torres entered the ship's primary hold, where rows of massive data servers hummed quietly. These servers contained humanity's most precious cargo, evidence meticulously collected over centuries. Every order, every massacre, every lie. Chief Engineer Renata Singh looked up from her console, brushing silver-streaked hair from her face. Phase 1 complete, Captain. The transmission reached approximately 60% of hegemony territory before they managed to lock down their networks. That's enough, Julian replied. The truth spreads like fire, they can't contain it now. Strategic Officer Marcus Wells approached, his artificial arm glinting under the lights. A relic from the early days of the escape, when medical technology had been primitive. We've received confirmation from our sleeper cells, Marcus reported. Underground movements are mobilizing across 17 worlds. The hegemony is facing internal pressure like never before. Julian nodded, studying the tactical display, and Phase 2. Ready when you are, Renata confirmed. The data packet for the Zenithar archives is prepared. If your archivist contact can access the main distribution node, we can bypass their security protocols entirely. She'll come through, Julian said with quiet confidence. Nayla Jor has been our most valuable asset for years. Her family died during the purification, she just didn't know it until we contacted her. Lieutenant Commander Diana Wright, the ship's security chief, frowned. Her hand unconsciously touched the ancient insignia tattooed on her neck, the Earth that was no more. Are we certain she hasn't been compromised? The hegemony security services are thorough. We've been careful, Marcus assured her. Limited contact, dead drops, encoded messages that would appear as routine archive requests to any observer. Julian turned to face his senior staff. These people and their ancestors before them had dedicated their lives to this mission. Generation after generation, preserving the truth, planning for the day of reckoning. The hegemony will respond, he warned them. They'll try to discredit us, frame us, possibly even stage atrocities in our name. Be prepared. As if on cue, Talia's voice came over the comms. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from our network on Zenithar. The hegemony is mobilizing a strike force. Their target appears to be the Navari refugee settlement on Elysium. Julian's face hardened. Exactly as expected, they're planning to massacre civilians and blame it on us. He turned to Marcus. Contact our operatives near Elysium. We can't stop the attack, but we can document it. The galaxy will see who the real monsters are. The quiet determination in the captain's eyes reflected centuries of patient waiting. The hegemony had tried to exterminate humanity, but they had failed to understand what made humans so dangerous in the first place. Their relentless memory and their capacity for both forgiveness and vengeance. The reckoning had only just begun. Blood-red emergency lights bathed the corridors of the Elysium colony as Navari refugees scrambled toward evacuation pods. Sirens wailed, drowning out the screams of panic as hegemony dropships descended through the atmosphere. Governor Praxis, a tall Navari with luminescent skin now dim with fear, coordinated the evacuation from the colony's command center. Get the children to the shelters first, he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Medical personnel with them, everyone else to defensive positions. His aide Jevna monitored the approaching hegemony forces. Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. They claim they're responding to a human terrorist attack. What attack? Praxis demanded. There have been no humans here. Before Jevna could respond, the first explosions rocked the colony's perimeter. Hegemony shock troops breached the outer defenses with practiced efficiency. They're not here to investigate, Praxis realized with growing horror. They're here to create a narrative. Unknown to the hegemony forces, a small stealth drone hovered high above the colony. Deployed from the HSS Remembrance hours earlier, it recorded everything: the unprovoked assault, the methodical destruction of civilian structures, the rounding up of witnesses. Aboard the Remembrance, Captain Torres and his crew watched the feed in grim silence. "They're not even trying to be subtle," Diana Wright observed, her hands clenched into fists. "They want this to be seen, to be attributed to us." "Because fear is the only weapon they have left," Julian replied. "The truth is out. They can't contain it anymore, so they're trying to rewrite it, make us the monsters they've always claimed we were." Talia Reeves studied the tactical display. "The colony's defenses won't hold much longer, should we intervene." Julian closed his eyes briefly, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "We can't, not directly. If we engage the hegemony forces, we validate their claims that humans attacked the colony." "So we just watch them die?" Engineer Singh demanded, her voice breaking. "No," Julian's voice hardened. "We ensure they didn't die for nothing. Talia, activate our sleeper cell on Elysium, full emergency protocols." The hegemony forces had pushed deep into the colony when the unexpected counterattack began. Not from the colony's meager defense force, but from within the hegemony ranks themselves. Commander Zevrik of the 5th Assault Division watched in confusion as his forward units suddenly turned their weapons on each other. Communications dissolved into chaos as conflicting orders flooded the tactical net. "What's happening?" he demanded of his second-in-command. "Unknown, sir," the officer replied, frantically checking his displays. "Possible communication system failure or—" The officer never finished his sentence, as a precision shot from an unknown sniper struck him directly between his four eyes. Throughout the hegemony assault force, carefully placed deep-cover human agents activated simultaneously. Some had lived among the hegemony for decades, their true identities buried beneath layers of genetic modification and forged histories. Now they executed their contingency orders with cold efficiency. By the time Commander Zevrik ordered a retreat, half his force had been decimated, not by the colony's defenders, but by invisible enemies within his own ranks. On Zenithar, Naila Jor watched the hegemony's official broadcast with growing disgust. The state news reported a cowardly human attack on the peaceful colony of Elysium, showing carefully edited footage of the aftermath: burning buildings, terrified survivors, and most damning of all, apparent Terran weapon signatures. "They're spinning it already," Professor Landau observed, his aged face grim. "But there's more happening than they're admitting. Look at the hegemon's security detail, it's been doubled since this morning." Naila nodded. "They're afraid. The resistance networks are reporting uprisings on 7 outer worlds now. The Karathi Mining Consortium has declared independence. Even some military units are questioning orders." John R. Voss studied a secure data pad. "Our contacts in the diplomatic corps report that 3 neutral systems have rejected hegemony requests for support. The Elysium attack may have backfired. Many suspect it was staged." "Not enough," Krell growled. "Words and suspicions don't win revolutions." "No," Naila agreed, "but truth does, and I have access to the most powerful truth of all." She pulled out a small data key. "This will get us into the Central Archives distribution system. One upload and every record of the purification, every order, every death count, every suppressed report goes directly to the personal devices of every citizen in the capital." Tevik looked alarmed. "That's suicide. The moment you access that system, security will lock onto you." "I know," Naila said quietly. "That's why I'm going alone." The room erupted in protests, but Naila raised a hand for silence. "This was always the plan. I've been preparing for this moment my entire career. The humans trusted me with their most precious evidence. I won't fail them now." In the sterile White Council chamber of the Hegemon Palace, Admiral Thorne faced the wrath of Supreme Hegemon Dravix. "You assured me the Elysium operation would turn public opinion against these human terrorists," Dravix hissed. "Instead, we have reports of defections and questioning of orders throughout the fleet." "There were complications," Thorne admitted. "We underestimated the human infiltration of our forces. They had sleeper agents embedded within the assault teams." High Inquisitor Varek's crystalline skin shifted to a deep red of alarm. "Impossible. Our genetic screening would have detected any humans." "Not if they've advanced their technology beyond ours," Strategic Advisor Krell suggested. "Remember, these aren't the humans of 3 centuries ago. They've evolved, adapted. survived against all odds. The situation is deteriorating, Varric reported, reviewing incoming data. 17 colony worlds have gone dark, communication blackouts or deliberate severing of ties. The Mercantile Guild is calling for an immediate investigation into the Elysium incident. And most concerning, Admiral, 3 of your destroyer captains have refused direct orders to engage suspected human sympathizer vessels. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony, unchallenged for centuries, was beginning to fracture from within. Implement martial law, Dravix finally ordered. All colonial governors are to be replaced with military commanders. Any unit that hesitates to follow orders is to be immediately disbanded and its officers executed for treason. Supreme Hegemon, Elder Counselor Thella ventured, such harsh measures may only accelerate the dissolution. Perhaps we should consider. Consider what? Dravix snarled. Negotiating with terrorists, acknowledging centuries of lies, the moment we show weakness, the entire structure collapses. It's already collapsing, Thella replied softly. The question now is whether we guide that collapse toward reform or fight it until everything burns. Strategic advisor Krell studied the holographic display showing spreading unrest across hegemony space. We should focus on containment, find the human vessel, destroy it publicly, make it clear that this is not some grand return but merely a handful of terrorists exploiting old grievances. And how do you propose we find one ship that can apparently disappear at will? Admiral Thorne demanded. We don't need to find their ship, Krell replied with cold calculation. We need to find their network. Every resistance movement has a central node, key individuals who coordinate operations. His metallic gaze shifted to the Supreme Hegemon. Give me authorization to activate the Thought Police, full emergency protocols. Dravix nodded slowly. The Thought Police, the hegemony's most feared intelligence unit, operated outside all normal chains of command, answering only to the hegemon himself. Their methods were as effective as they were brutal. Find them, Dravix ordered. And when you do, make an example of them that the galaxy will never forget. Aboard the Remembrance, now hidden in the debris field of an ancient battlefield, Captain Torres received the encrypted report from their agents on Elysium. Casualties, he asked, dreading the answer. Marcus Wells consulted his data pad. Over 300 colonists dead, but our intervention saved nearly 2,000. They're being evacuated to neutral territory now. Julian nodded grimly, and our peoples. 6 confirmed losses, Marcus replied, his voice tight. 3 of our deep cover operatives were identified and eliminated. 2 more sacrificed themselves covering the evacuation. And, he hesitated, we lost contact with Agent Selwyn on Zenithar. Julian closed his eyes briefly. Selwyn had been their communication link to Nayla Jor if he had been compromised. We need to warn her, he said urgently. The archives op may be blown. Talia shook her head. All standard channels are under hegemony surveillance now. There's no way to reach her without exposing our entire network. Then we need to extract her, Julian insisted. Prepare a shuttle, I'll go myself if. Captain, Diana interrupted, her expression grave. Incoming emergency transmission. It's using the old Earth diplomatic frequency. Julian froze, that channel hadn't been used in decades. A last resort emergency protocol. Put it through, he ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the serene features of Elder Counselor Thella. Behind her, the ornate decorations of what appeared to be a private chamber in the Hegemon Palace. Captain Torres, she said, her voice calm despite the extraordinary circumstances. I believe it is time we finally met. The hegemony is deploying the Thought Police. Your network on Zenithar has been compromised. Your archivist is in imminent danger. Why should we trust you? Julian demanded. You're part of the hegemon's inner council. Because 300 years ago I voted against the purification, Thella replied simply. One of only 3 to do so, and I have spent every day since working to ensure that one day the truth would emerge. Her ancient eyes seemed to look through Julian. The time for hiding is over, Captain Torres. If humanity truly wants justice, you must step into the light. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. It could be a trap, Diana warned. Of course it could, Julian agreed. But if Nayla really is compromised, he straightened, decision made. Plot a course for Zenithar, direct approach, no stealth. It's time the hegemony saw us coming. As the remembrance prepared to emerge from hiding, Julian knew they were entering the most dangerous phase of their generations-long mission. The hegemony was wounded, its carefully constructed narrative crumbling, and a wounded predator was always at its most deadly. The reckoning had reached its tipping point. The central archives of Zenithar stood like a temple to knowledge, a soaring structure of crystal and alloy that housed the collective history of the galactic hegemony. To most citizens, it was a symbol of enlightenment and preservation. To Nayla Jor, it had become both sanctuary and prison. She moved through the restricted section with practiced calm, her official archivist credentials allowing her passage through security checkpoints without question. Years of careful positioning had led to this moment, access to the primary distribution hub that connected all information networks across the capital. Her hands trembled slightly as she inserted her access key into a seldom-used terminal tucked away in a forgotten corner of the xenobiology section. The human's data package was hidden within a seemingly routine archive update, a virus disguised as maintenance code. "You shouldn't be here, Junior Jor." The voice froze her blood. Senior Archivist Bendler stood in the shadows, his arachnid form unnervingly still. "Just finishing the catalog updates you requested, Senior Bendler," she replied, forcing calm into her voice. Bendler's compound eyes studied her. "An interesting choice of terminal, this one hasn't been used in decades." "I prefer the older interfaces," Nayla said, her mind racing for excuses. "Less monitoring from administrative." "Yes," Bendler agreed, moving closer. "Less monitoring, which makes it perfect for activities one wishes to keep private." Nayla's hand inched toward the hidden blade in her sleeve. If he had discovered her true purpose, she would have only one chance. "I've watched you for years, Nayla Jor," Bendler continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Your careful questions, your interest in redacted histories, your convenient access to restricted sections." "Sir, I wondered when you would finally make your move." Bendler's voice changed, losing its formal cadence. "Your human friends are running out of time." Nayla tensed, ready to strike, when Bendler did something unexpected. He reached past her and entered an override code into the terminal, unlocking security protocols she hadn't even known existed. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "What I should have done centuries ago," Bendler replied. "The distribution hub is now open to you. Whatever you plan to upload will reach every connected device in the capital instantly. But you must hurry, the thought police have already entered the archives." Nayla stared at him in disbelief. "You're helping me, why?" "Because I was there," Bendler said simply. "I saw the purification firsthand. I cataloged the atrocities, sealed them away as ordered. I've spent 3 centuries preserving the evidence, waiting for someone brave enough to use it." His compound eyes reflected the dim light. "I am too much a coward to do it myself, but I can at least open the door for you." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the archives. Bendler chittered nervously. "They've detected the security override. Go now." Nayla hesitated just a moment, then plunged the data key into the terminal. The upload began immediately, thousands of files, videos, testimonies, and orders flooding into the hegemony's information network. The truth, unfiltered and unstoppable. "Thank you," she said to Bendler, but the senior archivist was already moving away. "Eastern emergency exit," he called back. 2 minutes before security lockdown, run." In the skis above Zenithar, the HSS Remembrance dropped out of quantum displacement directly above the capital city. A brazen, impossible maneuver that sent the planetary defense grid into chaos. "They've locked onto us," Talia reported from Tactical. "Defense platforms charging weapons." "Let them," Julian replied calmly. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Let everyone on the planet see us." The massive view screens that dominated Zenithar's public spaces, normally displaying hegemony propaganda, suddenly showed the Remembrance hovering above the city like an ancient specter. Millions of citizens stopped in their tracks, staring up at the impossible sight of a human warship. And then their personal devices began to chime, one after another. The archive's upload had begun. Inside the palace, Supreme Hegemon Dravix watched in mounting horror as reports flooded in. "Shut it down," he roared. "Cut all networks, jam their transmission." "It's too late," High Inquisitor Varric replied, his crystalline skin now a sickly gray. "The data is already propagating across civilian channels, and it's comprehensive." On screens throughout the chamber, Images from the purification played in horrifying clarity. Execution orders bearing the former hegemon's seal, massacre footage, medical experiments on human prisoners. 3 centuries of buried history erupting into the present. How did they access the central archives? Dravix demanded. Those records were sealed under highest security. They had help, came Krell's cold voice as he entered the chamber. The Thought Police have identified a network of collaborators throughout the capital, including within your own council. His metallic gaze fixed on Elder Counselor Thella, who sat serenely in her chair, watching the chaos unfold with what appeared to be satisfaction. Traitor, Dravix hissed at her. No, Thella replied, just someone who remembered what truth meant before you buried it. At Krell's gesture, Thought Police officers seized the ancient counselor. She made no effort to resist. The human vessel is holding position, Admiral Thorne reported, entering the chamber. They've made no aggressive moves despite our defense grid targeting them. Destroy them, Dravix ordered, now. Thorne hesitated. Supreme Hegemon, the vessel is directly above the capital. A missed shot or debris could. I don't care if half the city burns, Dravix raged. I want that ship obliterated. Outside the palace walls, the first protest had already begun. Citizens carrying hastily made signs bearing the words truth and justice gathered in the central plaza, their numbers growing by the minute as the revelations spread. Nayla raced through the labyrinthine corridors of the archives, alarms wailing around her. The upload was complete, her mission accomplished, but survival now seemed unlikely. Ahead of her, the eastern emergency exit beckoned, but between her and freedom stood 3 black-armored figures. Thought Police, the most feared enforcers in the hegemony. She skidded to a halt, searching frantically for another route when a loud explosion rocked the building. The ceiling collapsed between her and the Thought Police, and through the newly created hole descended a sleek shuttle bearing no markings. Its hatch opened to reveal a human woman in a military uniform. Nayla Jor, called Lieutenant Commander Diana Wright, extending a hand. Captain Torres sends his compliments, need a ride. Nayla didn't hesitate. She grabbed Diana's hand and was pulled aboard just as the Thought Police began blasting through the debris. Did it work? She asked breathlessly as the shuttle rocketed upward. The upload. Diana smiled grimly. See for yourself. She gestured to a view screen showing the streets of Zenithar. Crowds were gathering, growing larger by the minute. The carefully maintained order of the capital was dissolving into something new and unpredictable. I never thought I'd live to see this, Nayla whispered. Your parents would be proud, Diana said quietly. Nayla looked at her sharply. You knew my parents. I knew of them. They were among the last human settlers on Proxima Colony. They refused evacuation when the purification began, stayed to warn their non-human neighbors. Diana's eyes held a mixture of respect and sorrow. They saved hundreds at the cost of their own lives. Nayla felt tears welling. Her entire life she had believed herself an orphan of unknown origin, adopted by a Zenithari family out of charity. To learn that she had come from heroes. We're approaching the Remembrance, announced the pilot. And we've got company, hegemony interceptors on our tail. Diana strapped herself in. Hold on, this might get rough. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Julian watched the planetary defense grid power up. Despite the growing civil unrest below, the military remained loyal to Dravix. The massive energy cannons surrounding the capital were now aimed directly at his ship. Extraction team is 2 minutes out, Talia reported. They've got hegemony fighters in pursuit. Julian nodded. Deploy countermeasures, nothing lethal, we're not here to confirm their propaganda. Captain Communications Officer Fan called urgently. We're receiving a priority transmission from within the palace. It's on a secure channel. Put it through, Julian ordered, bracing for another trap. The screen flickered to show Strategic Advisor Krell, his metallic features unreadable. Captain Torres, he began without preamble, you've made a critical error in your calculations. Julian said nothing, waiting. You believed that exposing the truth would fracture the hegemony, Krell continued. You were correct, but you failed to anticipate the response of those with the most to lose. Dravix has just ordered the complete destruction of your vessel, regardless of civilian casualties. The defense grid will fire in approximately 3 minutes. Why are you telling me this? Julian demanded. Because unlike Dravix, I can see the inevitable, Krell replied. The hegemony in its current form is finished. What matters now is what replaces it. You want to negotiate after everything your people did to mine. I want to survive, Krell corrected. As does the majority of the council, Dravix is no longer rational. He would rather see the capital in ruins than admit 3 centuries of lies. Julian's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you proposing? A ceasefire, amnesty for those not directly involved in the purification, a truth commission to fully examine the past, and in return you withdraw your vessel before Dravix forces a conflict that will devastate this planet. Captain, Talia interrupted urgently. Defense platforms are reaching full charge. We have maybe 2 minutes before they fire. Julian studied Krell's impassive face. After centuries of planning, of patient waiting, victory was within grasp, yet the cost would be high, millions of innocent lives caught in the crossfire of vengeance. You participated in this cover-up for years, Julian said to Krell. Why should I believe you now? Because unlike Dravix, I never believed humans were monsters, Krell replied. Misguided, perhaps dangerous in their unpredictability, but not deserving of extinction. The purification was the greatest crime in our history, Captain Tors. Help us face it without committing another. Julian made his decision. Pull back the defense grid, all of it, then we'll talk. The grid is under Dravix's direct control, Krell admitted, but there is another option. He leaned closer to the screen. The palace shield generators, if they were to malfunction, the Truth Police would have a clear path to Dravix. Comprehension dawned on Julian's face. You're staging a coup. I prefer to call it an urgent transition of power, Krell replied. For the good of all species, including what remains of humanity. As the extraction shuttle docked with the Remembrance, bringing Nayla to safety, the palace shields on Zenithar mysteriously failed. Within minutes, the reports reached the bridge. Supreme Hegemon Dravix had been detained by his own Truth Police. A new interim government was being formed, led by a coalition including Strategic Advisor Krell and, surprisingly, Elder Counselor Thela, who had somehow escaped execution. Do we trust them? Talia asked as they watched the news broadcasts. No, Julian replied honestly. But this was never about trust, it was about truth, and the truth is out now, it can't be buried again. Nayla Jor entered the bridge, still looking slightly dazed at finding herself aboard a human vessel. Her eyes widened as she took in the crew, humans, alive and thriving, when she had been raised to believe them extinct. What happens now? She asked Julian. He turned to her, a weary smile on his face. Now comes the hard part, rebuilding, reconciliation, justice without vengeance. He gestured to the viewscreen showing the crowds on Zenithar. Those people just had their entire understanding of history shattered. What comes next will define this galaxy for generations. And humanity's role in it, she pressed. Julian looked around at his crew, the descendants of refugees, of survivors who had kept the flame of humanity alive in the darkest corners of space. For centuries, they had lived for this moment, for the opportunity to reclaim their place in the galaxy. We return, he said simply, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as equals. We have colonies beyond the rim, technology the hegemony has never seen, an entire civilization built in secret. Now we bring it into the light. As the Remembrance prepared to depart Zenithar, leaving behind a transformed political landscape, Julian Tors gazed at the stars beyond. For the first time in 300 years, humans could travel these stars openly, without fear of extinction. The journey had been long, the price had been high, but the silence of humanity was finally over. On Zenithar, in the new Provisional Council chambers, Krell and Thela watched the human vessel depart. Do you think they'll keep their word? Krell asked. Accept peace rather than pursue further vengeance. Thela's ancient eyes reflected wisdom earned through centuries of patience. Humans are capable of great hatred, it's true, but they're also capable of greater forgiveness than any species I've encountered. She turned to Krell. The question isn't whether they can forgive us, it's whether we can forgive ourselves. As the HSS Remembrance vanished into quantum displacement, the message that spread across the galaxy was clear. The truth, no matter how long buried, would eventually find its way into the light. And with truth came the possibility, however fragile, of justice and reconciliation. The silent vengeance of humanity had been served not through destruction, but through memory. And in memory lay the seeds of a new beginning.